everyone, Zenitsu here. Hey everyone, Jenitsu here. So in the last video I talked about Inosuke's subconscious, so if you want to see that, here's the link. And that means today I'm going to be talking about our sweet cowardly yellow boy, Zenitsu. Best boy. What was that? The wind. So if you're wondering why Zenitsu's subconscious appeared the way it did, what his dream says about his inner self, or why his spiritual core was hidden, those are the questions I'll be answering in this video. Also, I think it's kind of neat that the day I decided to film a Zenitsu video, a big old thunderstorm came through. Perfection. Anyhow, let's get right into it. Mugen Train spoiler warning. Zenitsu's explanation is a little longer because, oddly enough, I actually think his is the most complex of the four. Since there's a lot to uncover, I'm going to hit the subconscious first and touch on the dream as we go. So the boy trapped inside his subconscious describes it as heavy and hard to breathe, like everything is covered in ink. And everywhere he looks, it's pitch black, which indicates that Zenitsu suffocates under the weight of his own self-loathing. His subconscious is the complete opposite of Tanjiro's in that regard, in spite of him being a good-hearted person. Let's unpack that. Zenitsu was orphaned at a young age, and therefore claims in chapter 34 that no one ever had any dreams for him or expected him to become anything of value. Though his teammates value him and Gramps is proud of him, Zenitsu continues to only see his own uselessness, viewing himself as a burden to those around him. Huh. I definitely have a type, don't I? I love my screaming blondes with tragic backstories. And apparently, doting grandfather figures. I learned something about myself today. I think the black ink thing is interesting too. It kind of tells me that Zenitsu knows who he really is deep down, who he's meant to become, but has deliberately blotted it out in favor of his self-doubt. The same way you scribble over a picture you drew that you're ashamed of. That fact also shows in the way he manifests in his subconscious. Inosuke looks about the same, except his boarhead is real and he can bite the intruder with it. But Zenitsu looks hollow and gaunt compared to his actual self, revealing that he sees himself as even weaker than he is. And after he appears, he chases the intruder boy around with a cutting tool. The choice of weapon might have to do with the severed ties of his past, his first wife that settled him with all the debt, his brotherly rejection from Kaigaku, or it could just be he has hedge clippers from all the time he spent training on a peach grove. Might not even be that deep. But since there's a lot of symbolism in this arc, there probably is some underlying meaning to it. If I had to venture a guess, it would probably be that Zenitsu incarnated a weapon from the time he felt the most secure, under the tutelage of his Gramps. Even if it was painful and difficult for him, it's the only article of self-defense his soul has. From here he threatens the kid, saying Nezuko is the only one allowed inside, meaning she's the only one he's willing to reveal his true self to. And this dedication is demonstrated, as he saves her life 3 separate times in this movie alone. First with the demon, second when the train overturns, and third when the sun comes up. Now at this point one could argue that Zenitsu's affections might still be superficial, that he sees Nezuko as more of a means to his family unit dream than an actual person he falls in love with. And that's valid. But something the anime cut that's in the manga makes me disagree. By the time they embark on the train mission, Zenitsu has already shown strong favoritism to Nezuko over the other women at the Butterfly Estate. Instead of flirting with Shinobu like he had before, he steals her goldfish bowl just so he can show it to Nezuko, and gets in trouble as a result. On a regular basis, he just sits with Nezuko's box and talks to her, catches her up with the training progress when Tanjiro is worn out, makes her promises of places he'll take her when things get back to normal, and he takes her out where the flowers bloom only at night since she can't go out in the sunlight. And she scratches on the box to let him know that she's listening. So they have their own little language. And it made me a little bit sad that they cut this from the rehab training arc. But anyway, I guess the point I was trying to make with this tangent is that Zenitsu is very smitten with Nezuko as soon as he meets her. And by this point in the series, I believe his feelings to be genuine. Speaking of Nezuko, let's touch on the dream he had with her. I thought it was actually really sweet and innocent. And I think if Zenitsu was the womanizer some of his haters claim he is, his dream likely would have looked something like this instead.
Oh Lord. Do you want to try the position on page 37?
It's made apparent by the casual romantic air of the dream that Zenitsu just wants to spend time with another person who values him or finds him useful, even if it's in a small and trivial way, like helping Nezuko cross the river. Now, this earnestness has burned him in the past, when his blindness in the face of love allowed his first wife to take advantage of him and plunge him into debt. And just to add insult to injury, she did so just so she could run off with another man. It's honestly nothing short of a miracle that Zenitsu would have any trust left in his heart at all after that, let alone be so eager to let himself fall into the same situation a second time. But then again, maybe he's just a little bit stupid when it comes to love. I'm guessing that's not the case anymore though. His keen hearing allows him to read the type of person you are. And while he's agreeable enough to overlook it and still spend time with someone he doesn't like, I think after that encounter, he's more aware of who is more or less likely to manipulate him. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that women are just his weakness, since he seems to just throw trust at them no matter who they are. He says in the manga that he trusts who he wants to trust, and it's clear he really wants to trust all women, whether or not they're all equally deserving of his trust. But here's where the dissonance happens. Zenitsu, in essence, wants to make others happy, which seems weird because if you watch his behavior around women, particularly at the Butterfly Estate, he comes off as very self-serving. He wants to be around them and is blinded to the fact that they find him annoying or even disrespectful. And almost in an act of self-sabotage, he quite literally chases them away like he does the boy in his subconscious, before they can know him fully or hurt him on a deeper level. And this is because of Zenitsu's crippling fear of abandonment. But let's take it a step deeper, with Zenitsu's abandonment test. Okay, we all know Zenitsu is whiny by nature. I don't think anyone doubts that. But I think on some level, he tests people with it. Hear me out. So remember when the trio was outside the forest of the spider demons? Zenitsu, as usual, was hesitant to go in because he was afraid and could hear the danger. At this point, he just wanted his friends to say they needed him, to try and coax him a little bit to go in with them. But when he refused to go, they just left him there and it hurt his feelings. What's funny is that Chuntaro, his sparrow, played the Jigoro role instead and bit him until he went into the forest, and afterwards came to check on him. As a result, they ended up bonding. And from there onwards, Zenitsu was able to understand her, whereas before he couldn't. Now he listens. And I think that's because he finally opened himself up to her. I'm betting this has to be the case, because he did this before too with Tanjiro at the drum house. He was like, no way, I'm staying out here. And Tanjiro said, fine, but I'm going. And Zenitsu clung onto Nezuko's box saying, okay, I'll go. Even though Tanjiro made no attempts to convince him to do so, because he wants to help. I think after Zenitsu spent some time befriending them, he expected them to know that about him, what he wants to hear. And when the forest encounter came, they disappointed him once again, reinforcing the idea that he isn't needed by the people he cares about. And that could be a factor in why his painful past came rushing back to him a few minutes later. He whines so that someone will contradict him, to tell him to buck up because he has a job to do, and that he's important. And the rest of the time he just whines because that's who he is. So in summary, from my perspective, it appears that Zenitsu reveals the more insufferable side of himself up front, to see who will stay by his side through the worst, and who will simply abandon him. Only after they win his trust does he start to show his loyal, thoughtful, and protective sides. Tanjiro was the first example of this, because due to his kind sound, Zenitsu knew to trust him right away, and immediately sacrificed his own body to protect something important to him. He continues to develop this stronger sense of duty to those around him as the series goes on, and that's the core of his character progression. But it's clear that even though Gramps never gave up on him, somehow Zenitsu's feelings of worthlessness still prevailed. Kaigaku definitely played a big role in this, because in spite of Gramps believing in him, Kaigaku reinforced Zenitsu's doubts of himself. And the unfortunate fact that he's always asleep and isn't even aware during the moments where he shows his strength only worsens the problem. Because emotionally he has no proof to counter the inner voice telling him that he was a waste of Jigoro's time and that all his effort would have been better spent on someone else. So long story short, Zenitsu needs reassurance on a much grander scale than Rengoku, but he rarely seems to receive it. It also says something about his character that he didn't do anything majorly heroic in the dream. It's his dream. He could have saved Nezuko from something huge and terrifying and made himself look better, but he opted for something small to make her happy. So even the tiniest amount of value in the eyes of another person is enough for him. And damn, does that just break my freaking heart, man? Huh. He doesn't fool himself into thinking he's a good fighter in his subconscious or willful dreams, even though he is. And I think that shows just how deep his self-loathing goes. But I think the other question we're all asking ourselves is, why was Zenitsu's core hidden when he's such an open person? Open about his fears, his sadness or loneliness. He's open about his love for Nezuko and Gramps. And it's because his spiritual core isn't actually hidden. It's in plain sight. You just have to feel around for it a little bit. And that just really does sound like Zenitsu, doesn't it? Gotta sift through the mushy blob of tears and tedious childish behavior, but there it is, bright and sweet and genuine, just waiting to serve and be loved. All it needs is a good polishing. Hone it to perfection, Zenitsu lovers. It's obvious his and Inosuke's scenes were written to be comic relief, but in retrospect they're actually kind of sad. Inosuke's rocky, treacherous identity and Zenitsu's debilitating self-loathing and abandonment issues are laid bare for the audience to see. And I think it's little details like these that make Gotoge's writing so special, and makes her characters feel so vulnerable and real. Even the silly archetype ones. Anyhow, if you want to see more on my little Moe Dorito prince, I do have another video planned for him in the near future, but for now that's all I have to say on him. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Last but not least is our darling protagonist Tanjiro, so stay tuned with that notification bell if you don't want to miss it. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video for more weeb content.